Good afternoon and happy Thursday, and welcome to another United Partners for Human Services workshop on this afternoon. We are honored to have Fredrick and Tamika Smith. They are the creators of I Did Creations, which is an interactive technology company that specializes in cybersecurity. And we have Fredrick Smith here, who has worked with the city of Tallahassee for a number of years in the IT department and is now a consultant for his own business with Idea Creations, along with his wife, Tomika Smith. And they will do a presentation on this afternoon entitled Cybersecurity for Nonprofits to discuss tools and resources that are available out there in terms of cybersecurity for nonprofits throughout the internet that are available, as well as resources that you can utilize for your own nonprofits to be able to protect yourselves from a technological standpoint. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass off the microphone to Fredrick and Tamika Smith to get us started.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin. And thank you, UPHS, for hosting this for us. And hopefully we can help you guys out with some of your cybersecurity needs. My name, like she said, is Fredrick Smith. I'm with Idea Creations. And my wife also is on. Her name is Tamika Archie Smith. I have had about 20 years of IT experience in the state and local government sector, about half of the time with the state, half of the time with the city. And the time that I was working for the city, I actually worked for the Tallahassee Police Department and administered their SIEGES program. And pretty much what that is SIEGES stands for Criminal Justice Information Systems. And pretty much my responsibility was to make sure that they were secure, all the systems and applications that they use at Tallahassee Police Department were secure, and that pretty much I managed the cybersecurity program for that purpose. Currently, I moved to North Carolina about a year ago, and I've moved into the private sector now. I work as a contractor, and I still provide support to the city of Tallahassee as a contractor. Tamika, do you want to say anything, or do you want me to just go ahead and kind of jump into the presentation?
You can certainly jump in. I'll just add, hi everybody, Tamika Smith. I worked for several years in Tallahassee in social services, and was very lucky that I had a husband who knew a lot about technology because, as you all know, as a nonprofit, you don't often have the resources to find and fund top-notch security systems or technology systems in any shape or form. And so I was very lucky. And so he came in and did a lot of this for us. And as he was doing it for us in the different groups that I work with, I said, other people need to know this. And they need to know that, you know, protecting themselves, protecting their staff is not out of reach, that it's absolutely possible. And there are a few tips that you can learn and things to look for so that you can protect the integrity of your organization on the internet and in the technology space. So I'm here if you have any questions. We do a lot of tag teaming. Whatever work that I do, I'm always going to Fred to say, how do we make this easier with technology? So he's a solutions expert, so I'm happy to be here. And any questions, please let us know.
All right. Thanks. And just to add on to what she was saying, that's pretty much one of our visions for our business, is to provide advanced technology solutions for small businesses and nonprofits. We both have done a lot of work in the nonprofits, state and local government space. And one thing we noticed is that, you know, from learning the things we learned doing that work, is that there's a lot of small businesses and nonprofits that don't have access to those things. So that's one of our visions and one of our goals with Idea Creations. So today we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity for nonprofits. And one thing that I've noticed in some of the nonprofits that I've been exposed to is that sometimes when people talk about cybersecurity, it can be very confusing or intimidating for nonprofits. But my goal here today is to try to break that down and make you guys understand, or show you guys that cybersecurity really isn't as complicated as you may think. And there are things that you can actually do now in your organizations to implement a cybersecurity culture to protect you from hackers and bad actors in the cyberspace. So I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of some of the recent events in Tallahassee with TMH and how they got hacked. And as we go through the presentation, I'll show you some of the pitfalls that maybe they could have avoided or that they could have implemented to avoid getting hit by some of those cyber attacks. So any questions? Oh, and I want to keep this as informal as possible. So if I know we only have an hour, and I'm gonna try to get through this as best as I can, but if I'm going too fast or if there's something that you don't understand, please stop me or slow me down so I can help you and make this presentation good for everyone involved. This presentation is, you don't have to be an IT expert for this presentation. You don't have to have any prerequisites or anything like that. I tried to make it to where, you know, this is good for, you know, even a cybersecurity professional or someone that, you know, is an executive or anyone that just wants to know how to better protect them from cybersecurity threats. All right, so first, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the objectives of what we're going to cover today. First, what I want to do is break down the definition of cybersecurity, because when you say that word, it just sounds intimidating, but it really isn't. And that's one of the things I want to break down for you today. We want to identify what types of cybersecurity threats there are out there. And I want to identify some processes that your agencies can use and implement so you can protect yourselves from those threats. That pretty much is the gist of what we're going to accomplish today in this presentation. All right, so let's break down the word cybersecurity. So if we take the word cyber, and I pull this directly from the Google Dictionary, the definition of cyber pretty much is, you can think of it as anything technology-wise. That's your computers, your data, servers, network, you know, anything technology-wise, you could basically break. That's what they're talking about when they talk about cybersecurity. That first part of the word is relating to technology. When you talk about security, the definition for security is the state of being free from danger or threat. So if you put those two words together, then you pretty much are talking about all of your technology resources and figuring out a way to protect yourselves from criminals or people from unauthorized accessing your data or any means of that. So I basically here, you know, like I said, I've got a little chart there just to make it simple. When you think of cyber, think of all of your technology resources, your network, your data, your servers, your desktops, and then the security part of it is the risk. So basically, we're going to protect our information technology systems from risk of being harmed or penetrated. So hopefully that kind of breaks it down so it's not as intimidating as you may think. Now, let's look at the nonprofits and why most nonprofits are at high risk for cybersecurity threats. So I pulled this from another article on Cloud Tweak. And by the way, I will provide this presentation to UPHS so that, you know, if you guys want to have a copy of it, they can give it to you after the training. But let's start off. So let's look at some of the reasons why you guys are most at risk. Well, one thing is because nonprofits aren't really adequately prepared for hacks and things of that nature. And that could be for a couple of reasons. I mean, and don't feel like you're alone, because even small and large businesses, they have the same problems you do. It's just that with nonprofits, you guys may not have funding, you know, for a cybersecurity program or to have cybersecurity staff. You may think that your information is not important, but it is. So everyone is dealing with that same problem. And I want to let you know that your data is important. But one of the main reasons, of course, is funding. But there are certain things you can do without an exorbitant amount of funding to protect yourself from cyber threats. Nonprofits also struggle just to meet their normal day-to-day activities. I mean, you guys are underfunded, undermanned, and all of that. So sometimes you may not even have the resources available to, even if you had the funding, you may not have resources that would want to or that could come in and protect you from cyber threats. You may not believe that your data is valuable, but I wanted to let you guys know that data is one of the most valuable things in information technology. You may just think about the conversations you may have had with a colleague where you talked about a new topic, or you talked about something that you were interested in. You went home that very same day and you saw a commercial about that very thing that you talked about. And, of course, I don't really have anything to show any proof that something is listening or something is recording you. But, I find oftentimes that I'll bring up a new topic and I'll see a commercial about it, because we have Siri, we got Alexa, we got all these different devices that we have used to kind of help automate things in our lives that are really listening to us all day and every day. And I'm not saying that it's bad that they're recording some of that information, because sometimes what they're doing is trying to enhance your experience on that commercial or on that program by showing you content that's relevant to you. So sometimes it's not bad, but just to let you know, your data is very important to a lot of different people for numerous different reasons, and especially to hackers. So, that's one thing that I've noticed, that a lot of nonprofits believe that their data is not very valuable, but it is valuable. So it's time for us to change that mindset and think about what we can do to start protecting ourselves from cyber threats. All right, so basically here are the different types of cyber threats on the screen. The biggest ones that I want you guys to pay attention to is the malware, the phishing attack, the zero-day exploit, and man in the middle. The other two, SQL injection and denial of service attacks, they're more what I coin as targeted threats. So, like if you think about Microsoft, or you're thinking about some big bank or something like that, basically those kind of attacks are directed to those organizations where it's a targeted attack. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. But what I want to focus on more is some of the other things like malware, phishing, and man in the middle. And I'm gonna go into each one of these in detail to give you a explanation of what they are. So malware is pretty much any type of software or type of program that a hacker has developed and has deployed on your machine to get information to your data, or get access to your data, or to corrupt your system or anything of that nature. So it's just a piece of software that you may have clicked on from an email, or put on your machine from a thumb drive, or browse the internet and download it. That's what pretty much malware is. Phishing attacks is the way that that malware is distributed to your system. So a phishing attack is like, I don't know if you probably have seen a lot of spam in your inboxes. Phishing is where a bad actor will try to pretend to be Netflix or some other account and use that to gain access to, or to make you think that it's a legit email. So you click on it and download the malware to your machine and install that on your system. So number two is probably the most exposure I've seen for users or people that have been attacked by viruses or been hacked. It usually happens from a phishing attack. So we're going to pay a lot of attention to that. Denial of service attack, like I said, you're not going to see this much, but a denial of service attack is basically when a hacker tries to flood a system with transactions to bring that system down, or to bring it to a stop. I don't know if you guys remember a couple weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago, when Taylor Swift put out her new tickets to her tour, and so many people logged onto the site to purchase tickets that it actually brought the ticket system down. That wasn't a denial of service attack, because those were real users actually trying to log onto that website. But there are hackers that have wrote a software that can simulate that same process to a system, where they just flood the system with different transactions to where it will bring that system down or bring it to a halt. Man in the middle is kind of like it's an eavesdropping attack. So think of it as like, you guys may have buildings where some of your clients come into your building, or maybe you may even hire someone to work for your organization, and maybe that person is trying to just get into your organization to get some information. And what they'll do is maybe stand behind a certain person and get their username and password, or they find out where the person has stored their username and password. Then they take that information and use their identity to log on to their system to either corrupt that system, get data that they don't need to have access to, or things of that nature. So we call that kind of it's man in the middle attack. Is really what I like to call this social engineering, but for this article that I got from web servers. That's what they call it, the man in the middle attack. The SQL injection is one that I don't think you guys need to worry about much unless you have, big databases or things of that nature. Basically, what a bad actor would do in this case is they would basically install a script and query your database. And they could do, once they get inside of your database, they can either query the information and pull data out, or they can actually put data into it and corrupt the data. So but that is usually done for a targeted attack. It's usually someone that knows what the system is, and they know what type of information you have on in your database, and they figure out a way to inject their code into your database. But that usually or typically doesn't happen with nonprofits. But 3 and 5 are the ones that I don't think you guys should worry about much. I will say I want you to know about them because they're out there and there's unique cases, but I wouldn't worry about those too much. And the day 0 exploit. What that is, and it's kind of complicated the way this works, is the 0-day exploit happens when there's a notification that a system is vulnerable. And they send out a notification to say, hey, the system is vulnerable and we're going to apply a patch in 2 weeks. Well, they've just notified the entire public or whoever they sent the notification out to that, hey, there's a vulnerability here. And that gives the attacker 2 weeks to get into that system using that vulnerability and do whatever they want to do, corrupt the data, pull down data, anything that they're trying to do anything they're trying to do to get access to that system. But the interesting thing about it is that once the patch is applied 2 weeks later, it virtually erases the fact that the person was there or that the hacker was there. So that one is a very interesting one. It's like I said, it's a little more complicated than others, but it is something that does happen. I'm gonna pause for a second because I know I'm probably talking a little fast. And is there any questions so far? All right. So these are the generic types of cyber attacks. So how do you know when you've been attacked? Now, of course, if your computer's running slow or if your system shuts down occasionally, or application fails to start, that is a sign that there's something wrong. It may not be a hacker, but definitely it's a sign that there's something wrong. And all of these items that I want to show here is, it may not be hacks. It may be something else going on. But to me, if any of these things are happening on your systems, you need to figure out what's going on with them and resolve them. So if your internet is slow, sometimes a hacker may not do anything specifically to your system, but they just want to get onto your system to pull down or download your data. So they may be taking up some of your bandwidth on your computer, and your computer may be running slow. So if you have multiple computers in your home or in your agency, you want to make sure and just verify that everyone is not having a problem. If everyone is having it, then that's typically an issue with your router or your internet service provider. But if it's just affecting your machine or one specific process, then that is definitely a need of concern. Again, it may not be a hack, but there's definitely something going on there. Unwanted programs are installed on your system, or files that you don't recognize or folders you don't recognize. I see this a lot on users' machines. If there's a program on your system that you're not aware of, then you need to remove it, or you at least need to investigate it for sure. But I would say you should understand and know all the programs and systems that are programs and applications that are running on your computer. So if something new pops up, you can recognize it and deal with it accordingly. I see it a lot where I'll sit at a customer's machine and I was like, well, what is this? And they were like, I don't know. So if you don't know, then you don't need it. So you definitely should have an inventory of what are the software and the things that you want on your systems. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too, just so that you can identify those unwanted systems and remove them from your computer. It'll definitely help your computer run a little better as well. This doesn't typically happen anymore. Back I would say probably about 10 to 15 years ago, pop-ups was really bad. But with the different revisions of different operating systems, they've kind of fixed some of the loopholes to creates pop-ups. But if you're having pop-ups on your machine, then you definitely have a problem there. I mean, it may not be a virus, but it's definitely spamware or something like to that nature. So if you're having pop-ups, those things need to be addressed as well. And if programs just crash routinely, then that's definitely a problem. Also, you definitely want to check to make sure your antivirus and your firewall is on. If your antivirus is disabled for any reason or your firewall is off, then that's definitely a concern, because the antivirus systems do not normally turn themselves off. I mean, from day one that you install the antivirus on your machine, it runs as long as the computer is running, the antivirus is running. So if it's not running, then someone has intentionally turned it off. And it's not necessarily easy to turn off an antivirus by mistake. If you go into your antivirus program and you try to turn it off, it's going to give you numerous prompts. It's going to say, are you sure you want to turn it off? And then it's going to ask, well, if you're going to turn it off, do you want to turn it off for 30 minutes, an hour, a day or so? It's gonna make sure that you're aware that you're turning off the security system for your machine. So if you find that your antivirus is off, that's definitely a problem. The same thing goes for your firewall. All right, so I want to, because I know I'm talking a lot, so I like to put in some little videos here to just give you some examples. And this video here is going to illustrate how you can slow hackers down. And notice that I use the term slow them down. And I say that because there is no 100% secure system. There's always some way to get into a system, no matter who's developed it or who manages it. There's always some risk there, but the goal is to slow them down. But let's check out the video real quick so you can get some examples of what I'm saying. So here, this is basically, think of this as a firewall or antivirus, and right now there is no limits. So that this square represents no limits, and right here where it says no limits, we're going to just keep adding different policies to it to restrict access. And the cat is going to represent a bad actor trying to get into our system. So as you see with the no limits, the cat just walks straight through. You add a security policy, it's a little more restrictive. Password policy, it makes it even harder for him to get through. And then access controls makes it even harder. We have DLP policies. And then the strictest, this is a strict policy. Sometimes the hacker can just jump right over. So I wanted to show you guys that because it just goes to show, standards or ISO 27K is kind of like a cybersecurity standard, and I mean it's very secure. But like there's always a way around. As at the top, you can see using a home device in the workplace. That's a way that they can go right and bypass the system. So I wanted to just show you guys a comical video to show that there's always a way around. So you just have to be diligent in protecting and securing your systems. All right, so generally speaking, when we talk about cybersecurity, we try to implement cybersecurity programs. There is a 5-step approach to cybersecurity, and generally speaking, you want to go through the identify step, the protect step, and the detect step. Those the first 3 are the different areas that happen before an incident. Once you have an incident, then you're going to respond and recover from that event. All right, so what I've done here is I've highlighted in red things that you actually can do with very little resources or funding right now within your agencies to protect yourself. Of course, in white is the items that you may need external support, or maybe have a cybersecurity person or IT staff member and some resources to help you do those things. And I like Yelp, and they use that little the dollar signs to indicate how much those different things cost as far as getting some of those resources. But what I want to do is show you some of these items in red that you can actually do to help protect yourself from cyber in the event of a cybersecurity threat. So let's start off with the step one, identify. So a lot of people don't do this, and this is one of the easiest things that you can do. It does take some time and effort, but you want to identify all of your critical systems and applications and IT resources. And what you can see there in the illustration, I just have a little spreadsheet there that is very simple. It just says data, location, value, security, access, and audit date. You can just create that in Excel. You can make this as complicated as needed, but right here, what I have is just as general as what you need. So you can basically list out your data. You want to list where it's located, and very important, you want to give it a value, because if you have an incident, you want to be able to know which systems and what data is the most critical, and what's the things I need to pay most attention to and protect the most. So you definitely want to give it a value based off of your policies or what you're doing, which systems and data is most valuable to you. And then you want to identify what type of security you're using to access that system. Is it password protected? Does it have a password and PIN? Is it biometric? Things of that nature. So at least, if something happens, you can refer to this and know how to get into that system. Really, really important is your who has access to those systems and that data. You want to identify all of those users, and you want to. The last item is every once in a while conduct an audit on this list and update it accordingly. So John Brown may have been terminated a year ago, but he still has access to the system. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that where people that have left the agency still have access to the system. But if you create a sheet like this and you audit it every maybe every month or every quarter, I would not go further than a quarter, but at least maybe a month or at most a quarter. Then that'll give you a secondary layer to say, oh, well, John is no longer here, let me remove him from the system and update the log. And you see there at the end I have the audit log date. So this is very simple. The identify step, it does take some time because you want to identify all of your assets, but it's a very simple way to track and manage your assets. And you want to keep multiple copies of this. I'll talk about that too later in the presentation. All right, so let's talk about the protect step. So like I said before, you want to have multiple copies of contracts as well. So and because think about it like this, if you have your support contracts, and I'll go ahead and click on the next slide, the same thing if you have a cybersecurity insurance contract, you definitely want to have multiple copies of that. And I would also say just have a paper copy of it, because if your system is threatened or attacked and they wipe out all your data and your contracts are there, how are you going to get your contract information and know who you need to contact and your serial numbers and things of that nature if all of that information has been wiped out or deleted? So you definitely want to make sure you have multiple copies of those two things. You want to revise and update and enforce any access policies that you have. So, I mean, if you have any IT policies that you want to make sure that you're reviewing those at least on a yearly basis, and making sure that they're up to date, because things change, and you definitely want to stay up with different create a cybersecurity culture so that as you guys move throughout the year, you're learning the new things that are out there, and you may have to adjust your policies and procedures accordingly. So stay current with current cybersecurity news. Keep your staff up to date and show them cybersecurity best practices. Offer them training, things of that nature. And most importantly, and I see this all the time, use the least restrictive access. And I know I'm going to make a couple people mad, but just because you're an executive director doesn't mean you need to have access to everything on the network. because I'll say this, the main person in the organization that's targeted for cybersecurity attacks are executive leadership. So if your executive leadership has access to all systems and all of the data, and they don't really need access to it, and they don't use it, and they're attacked, think about it like this: when they're attacked, everything they have access to is compromised. So when you're attacked, if the person that only has access to one system is attacked, then you know that that one system is the only thing that you need to worry about. But if they have access to everything, now everything is compromised. So least restrictive access is very important. Now, don't get me wrong, if I know in some of the smaller agencies, the executive director is doing a lot of the work, and if they're doing the work, then yes, they need, of course, they need access. But if they're just leading the team and the team is doing all the work, then maybe you may need to consider if they they need access. And not just, I'm not talking about just for executive leadership, but I'm talking about for everyone in the department. You need to know what systems they need access to, and that's the only things they need to have access to. And of course, we want, phishing awareness campaign. So just, keeping them educated about different spam emails and things of that nature. All right, so this isn't really part of the presentation, but I had to throw this in there because I know I'm pretty sure there's a couple of people on the call that are still using Windows 7. And I know it's a funny little image that I have there, but Windows 7 has been dead for almost 3 years. Well, actually, it is 3 years now, over 3 years. So what that means is since January 14th of 2020, Microsoft is not providing any patches or any security patches and things of that nature to Windows 7 machines. So that's just that's just giving hackers easy access to your system, because they're every month Microsoft releases patches for their operating systems, and if you're not getting those security patches, then you're more vulnerable every single month as you move on. So if you don't have Windows 7, I would say, if you don't have Windows 10 yet installed, then you need to upgrade your system to Windows 10, if not Windows 11, so that you can start receiving those patches. But if you have Windows 7 or even below, because I know there's some people that are even below Windows 7, your systems are not fully protected. So I added this one as well. Even though Windows 10 is not dead yet, that day is coming. It's coming. It's going to be here in about 1.5 years. So Windows 11 is out, and I think if you have Windows 10, you can go ahead and update to Windows 11 now. And I would encourage you to do so, because as of that date, then Windows 10 will not receive any security patches. In addition to that, most software companies only devote time and resources to their most recent product. So if you're on an old product, just like in case here, Windows 10, they're not releasing any enhancements or updates to Windows 10. So as they make, enhancements, makes things easier, or they enhance the product, those enhancements are going to be directed to Windows 11. They're no longer going to be directed to Windows 10. So that's just another reason that you definitely want to update and stay current with the current operating system as much as possible. All right, I'll stop for a second again. Any questions so far?
I have a question. How much does that cost, the updating the system? Is that free?
Yes, well, I know for at least right now it is. And you have to be, that's the one thing about Microsoft. Early adopters usually get the upgrades for free. So right now it's free. I haven't seen any, as long as you have Windows 10, it is free. And if you're coming from Windows 7, I'm not sure, because I haven't used Windows 7 in a long time. But like I said, I think what they usually do is, if you're an early adopter, you typically can get it for free. But the longer you wait, then they'll start charging you for an upgrade.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so continuing along with the protect step, you definitely want to ensure, just like what I was just saying before, you want to ensure that all your systems are protected, and you do that by applying your updates. I can't express how many times I see this. Every time I sit down at a user's computer, I'll see the little spinning arrows in the bottom right hand corner that's telling them, please update your system now. And I'll sit down at the computer. Of course, I'll ask them first before I do anything to anyone's computer. I always ask. I say, hey, can I check out your updates and see where you are? And when I click on them, there's updates in there that have been there for months or sometimes even years. And I mean, it is so simple. Just to at the end of your day, if you see that little icon down there telling you to update your operating system, just turn it on and let it run overnight and let it do its job and update. But those updates have already been installed on your machine, or not installed, but they've been downloaded at least, and they're just waiting for your approval, because Microsoft won't do it unless you tell them to do it. And there's a way that you can tell the operating system, I want to get automatic updates, but by default, you have to approve those updates. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen that where users have updates that are just sitting there waiting. And like I said earlier, if you haven't applied those patches, your machine is compromised or vulnerable to hacks and different things from hackers. So Microsoft usually updates, I think it's the second Tuesday of the month. And I'm always checking mine. I check mine even probably more often than that, because sometimes they release updates sooner if it's something that's really critical that has come out. But generally, they release new security updates on a monthly basis. So you may just want to put a reminder to say check for updates on a monthly basis and apply any patches. You want to also make sure your antivirus is updated and running regularly. Like I can't say how many times I've looked at people's antivirus systems, and it's like years behind some of the definitions. But hackers are really it's hackers that spend 24 hours a day just building ways to hack into people's systems. And some antivirus systems actually release their definitions on an hourly basis. And you can actually, so now you don't have to go and check, for updates hourly. I'm not telling you guys to do that, but what most viruses do, they basically want you to go in and configure the antivirus to update on a routine basis, whether it's hourly, daily, or monthly. You can pick which one you want. I tend to have mine always set on hourly, but it won't do it. Some of them won't do it just by default. You have to actually open up your antivirus and tell it when to update your antivirus.
There's a question about free antiviruses, systems, and programs.
Great point. Okay, so yeah, they have a ton of antiviruses out there, Norton, McAfee, you name it. But now I will tell you this: if you're updated to Windows 10, Microsoft has actually embedded Microsoft Defender in their operating system. So you don't even have to buy an antivirus system if you have Windows 10. You can just use the Windows or the Microsoft version of Microsoft Defender. And it does a really good job. Yes, I think McAfee and Norton and all those other names out there, they may be a little bit better because their main focus is antiviruses. But the Microsoft Defender is a very good, very suitable antivirus system. And the one good thing about the Microsoft Defender is that because it's built by Microsoft in the Microsoft operating system, it's probably going to use less resources and won't slow your system down as much because it's embedded into their product. So if you're asking me for a recommendation of an antivirus, I would say if you want to just use a free antivirus system, I would just use the embedded Microsoft Windows Defender. So you're going to have to upgrade to Windows 10 if you haven't done so to get that. All right, you want to make sure that you enable your personal firewalls. If you don't have, now I'll say, we at the city, we have some firewalls that we purchased. We use, we have some software and hardware firewalls outside of the operating systems that we use. So we don't really use the personal firewalls as much. But if you don't have any system like that, then you definitely want to make sure your personal firewall is enabled. So you just want to, and I don't think, it seems like Microsoft goes back and forth between, if they're gonna enable it by default when you install the operating system. So I usually just make it a routine to check to see if it's enabled, because sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But that's one thing you want to do, is verify that the firewall is enabled and running. You may want to have a policy to limit if people can use removable flash drives and external hard drives on agency-owned machines, because there's no telling what people do at home, and not that I'm saying that anyone is intentionally, doing things at home to get viruses, but they may be at home using a computer that maybe one of the kids was playing a game, and then it downloaded the virus onto the thumb drive, and you bring it to work, and now the whole agency is compromised by that virus. So you just want to be careful about what kind of media that you use on your machines. If you ask me, I would say only allow agency-owned removable media, because if you have an IT group that assigns that media or gives those thumb drives out to users, they're going to ensure that they don't have viruses or they're infected with any malware and things of that nature.
What, can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
What about your phone? So if I bring my phone to the office and I log on to the Wi-Fi, does that put the agency's system at risk?
That depends, and I got a slide on that. so I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that the mobile devices is an issue. Some agencies do not allow external phone or personal phones on their network, but there is a way that you can segment your external devices from agency-owned devices on your network. And I got a slide that kind of talks to that point. All right, so one of the other things that's really, really important is complex passwords. You definitely want, if you're not using, you don't have a policy for your passwords on your systems and your Windows logins, you definitely want to implement one. And basically here is a version of that, basically having at least 8 characters and using 3 of the combinations below, a capital letter, lowercase, number, and special character. Most agencies now are moving to 12 characters and using all 4. And I'll show you on the next screen. This most of the information I have here is kind of dated, but I would say now it's really going to a really highly complex password. I'll show you that here in just a second. And you also want to consider multi-factor authentication. And what that is, and I know that's one of those words that looks very intimidating, but basically what that is having 2 forms of identification to log into a system. So you may have your username and password. That's one way to log in. And after you enter and successfully have submit your username and password, you may have a code or a text message that goes to your phone with a code that you have to enter that code. Not to throw you on the bus, baby, but my wife had her email compromised about a year ago, and we enabled multi-factor authentication. So now when she logs into her email, she's presented, her phone will send her a text for a code to enter her code in to actually proceed to log on. So now every once in a while, she'll get that notification that, someone's trying, or she'll get a code coming to her phone, meaning someone has tried to log into her system. So one, it lets her, that by having a multi-factor authentication, notifies her that, hey, there's someone trying to get into your email. But 2, that person can't get in because, there's a 2-factor authentication in place. So right now, if you don't have 2-factor authentication in place, you have no idea who's logging into your email and reading your emails or sending information or correspondence on your behalf without you knowing. You just don't know. So definitely consider that. So
I don't feel thrown under the bus at all. And I can say to everybody, it's not, I don't like it even to this day, having to do this 2-step system. But when I look at all of the attempts on the back end that people are trying to get into my email, I feel much more secure now that I have it. So yeah, I'll just say that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So basically what I was talking about with the password is most hackers, they have a tool called brute force. And what brute force does is it's a piece of software that will just randomly use dictionary terms, numbers, and just different special characters to log into your system. And what this chart shows you in those systems, and this was last year now. So as you guys know, technology gets better and better every day. This was last year. So if you had an 8-character password with lowercase letters, the brute force can figure out what your password is instantly. So if you just had a simple password, then someone that's trying to compromise your email or a system can get your password instantly. It's not until you implement numbers, uppercase, lowercase, letters, and symbols on an 8-character password that it takes 39 minutes. Now I'll tell you this, back about 3 years ago, and the reason why the standard was 8 on this slide is because 3 years ago, this 39 minutes was more like this 34 years. But as you can see on this chart, as technology gets better and faster, this chart continuously changes to where now in 2023, that this 39 minutes is probably more like 3 minutes. So if you move down to a 12-character password with all of those combinations, you're looking at 3,000 years. That's how long it would take a brute force attack to log into your account. So that's why we typically want to stay, and you can see the color codes they use in this this chart. This is green down here, so that's where you really want to be. But at least you want to be here somewhere in this orange area. So that's why most agencies are moving to a 12-character complex password. And like I said, this 3K is probably much faster now. All right, does that make sense?
It makes sense. It's
Okay.
just, it's a little bit scary, a little bit intimidating to know that it's that easy for people to get in. So I'm guessing we shouldn't write our passwords like on a sticky note or
Definitely not. And it's hard. It's really hard because nowadays there's so many systems with everything being automated, and there's multiple apps and all those things out there. It's really hard to manage passwords, but you can use password managers to do that. But it's really hard, and it's something that you really need to pay attention to. But I see that a lot too, where people they'll have sticky notes on their monitor with their username and passwords. And of course, if someone comes and sits down at your machine, they have access to your system.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to show here's a list of the 25 worst passwords. And this list, these are real passwords, folks, that people they use out there, so these passwords all fall under that category to where a brute force attack can break these passwords instantly. And so if you look over here, this little illustration on the left, it shows the username and password admin, which, by the way, is the default passwords for most of your commercial routers. When you buy a router from Best Buy or Office Depot and you take it home and install it on your network, your default password or username and password is usually admin or admin password. And if you don't change it, someone can log into your Wi-Fi network and change some of your settings and your Wi-Fi and grant themselves access to anything that's connected to your network. So now this is maybe a little far-fetched, but basically this is just an illustration of showing the difference between the two, that this one is that easy to break, whereas this one is more complicated to break.
What's your advice for using one password for more than one system? So like if I have a Gmail and I have my work email and I have I don't know, an account at Bed Bath & Beyond and I have to have a password, and is it okay to use the same password even if it's complex or across multiple systems, or what do you recommend?
The official answer is no. The official answer is no, you should have a unique password for every system. When I was managing the CGIS process at TPD, that was one of the requirements for all of the systems at TPD. And yes, a lot of officers complained about it, but it's just something that people have to get used to, and used to managing multiple passwords. Because here's the thing, think about it like this: if someone happily gets a copy of that, even if your password is secure, and someone gets a copy of it and they can gain access to that one system, all they have to do is go try that same username and password on your other systems, and they have access to those too. So I know, it's, if you have 50 different systems that you have to have access to, it's going to be hard to remember 50 different username and passwords. But I would say, you want to do your best, to try to keep, or to have unique username and passwords for every different system that you use. All right. All right. So here are some of the 10 things you can watch out for in a phishing attack. So we're going to talk about phishing, and what phishing is basically when a hacker basically sends an email out throughout your organization, and they try to pretend to be some other company, some other agency, or maybe the supervisor or boss from that agency. This document from Logarithm kind of shows you different things you can look out for. Number one, you don't want to trust the display name of who is on the email. So like, I don't know if you see when you get an email from like Microsoft or Netflix or whatever, they're going to have a display name, and they're going to have an email. You want to look at both of those fields, because they may say that they're from Netflix, but if they don't have a netflix.com domain, then of course, reasonably they're not from Netflix. I'm going to show you some examples of all of these things here in just a minute, but I just want to kind of go through them real quick. Look but don't click, and pretty much there you want. Oh, we only have 8 minutes left. I need to fly through this thing real quick, man. Let me just click through real quick. Sorry, guys. I want to show you a quick video real quick of a phishing attack, and this is a cool example. That's exactly what happens in a phishing attack. They want to make you believe that it's something legitimate. And here comes someone else that thinks it's an invoice. Here's another one. This is my favorite. I wish I would have knew about this one when my kids were little. So she thinks she's gonna get a good slice of pizza, but instead she got some tomatoes, something that she didn't want. And that's exactly how you look after you fall victim to a phishing attack, just like she looked. All right, so here's a quick example, and I usually will start by asking you guys to identify some things, but it's just within the essence of time. I'll just show you real quick. The display name for this email shows Netflix, but you can see here at the top, and this is a legit email. This is an email that I received, but you can see that it's not a Netflix domain. So that's what I was talking about earlier when I say you want to check both the name and the domain. Also, look at the font. You can tell that there's, most professional agencies will not do that. And this thing here, where it's REST ... and then member ... ship. You're not going to see that kind of stuff in the legitimate email. You also want to look at grammar. It's amazing how many times I see there's grammatic errors. Just like up here, you see a dot and then they started a new sentence, but down here you can see they have a dot and they have spaces. So you won't see grammatical errors in legit email. Same thing. Now this one is a lot better. This one actually looks just like my official American Express email. But if you look at the top, they have no reply at welcome.aexp.com, but this is the real email. And so what they tried to do here is trick you with the email address as a display name, because they thought maybe you wouldn't even see this. So you just have to be very careful. And before you click on anything, if I would have clicked on that confirm button, I'm pretty sure that would have downloaded something to my machine, give me some spamware or something. So just be diligent in that. And these are some things you may want to, as you see some of these things, you may want to send this information out to your staff. Just like I did here, do not send the email, take a screenshot of it and send it out to them. Just kind of identify, here's an example of what a phishing attack looks like. And this one is just a weird one. Like, definitely when I saw this, I'm like, this is definitely some kind of spam or phishing attack there. All right, so network security. So basically every router has a system in it where you can go in and log in and update your security. So you definitely want to segment your public and private network. So to what Tamika was saying earlier, the one problem that I noticed here on this diagram, you can see they have the wireless 2.4 and the wireless 5 gigahertz network. And this is the internal network. They created a guest network for users to come in, and like, just like for me, if I was in the office, I would join a guest network to log in to do a presentation or something like that. The one problem I notice here is that they allow the guest to have access to your local network. You definitely want to set this option to off, because on a guest network, you want them to only have access to the internet so that they can do whatever they need to do, but you do not want people to bring in external devices and have access to your network. So definitely you want to separate public and private networks. You want to make sure that you implement security. Sometimes people leave their Wi-Fi wide open where you don't have to put in a password. So you definitely want to do that. I think most people have caught on to that lately, but I do want to mention that. You want to consider if you even need to broadcast your network, because some people will sit out in your parking lot and just, try to access your network and break into your system. So if you hide your network, you can set it up to where users actually have to go in and type your wireless network to gain access to it. And like I said, it just depends on your agency and if you want to do something like that. And you definitely, like I said earlier, you want to reset your admin and password for your Wi-Fi network, or not the Wi-Fi network, but the actual login for your router. Because if someone can gain access to your router, they can go and change all of this stuff, to let other people into the network that you may not even want to have access to it. And they can actually, once they log in, they can actually kick you out of your own network. So you definitely want to be careful with that and reset your Wi-Fi and admin password. You also may want to consider access controls, because with access controls, you can actually say, I'm going to give you the address for all 5 of my workstations, and these are the only stations that I want to be able to log into my Wi-Fi. So even if I do have your Wi-Fi account and password, I still can't grant access to your network because I'm not on the access control list. Okay, so basically what I was saying before earlier, you definitely want to segment your internal network. So if you have a wireless access in your office, you want to set up a guest network, and then for that guest network, you do not want to grant the guest network access to your local internal network. So if you have like systems and servers and everything connected to your network, if you set this option here to off, the only thing the guests going to have access to is the internet. They won't have access to your systems or your servers and things of that nature. I hope I answered your question there. I saw a question in the chat. All right, so let's talk about backup strategy, and let me just kind of fly through this. It's important, but I know we've got and this is the time. You want to try to use a 3-2-1 strategy, and sometimes it's not possible because of resources, but basically you want to have 3 copies of your data. 2 copies should be on different mediums, 1 copy should be off site. So in this example I have below, you may have your original copy that's on the internal disk. You may have 1 copy that's synchronized to the cloud, so that's just creating your 2 copies. Then you may back up that copy to an external drive, so you actually have 3 copies of that data. Then you have 2 copies that are on different mediums, because you have one, that you have your disk media and you have your cloud offsite media, and then you have 1 copy, of course, that's offsite. So I know that's maybe a little confusing, but basically you want to have multiple copies of that data, because in the event of an incident, you want to have a way to get your data back. And most hackers, if they're really good hackers, when they attack your systems, they're going to try to find your backups too. And if they can get a hold of your backups, they're going to wipe those as well, because they don't want you to be able to restore your backups, because they're going to want you to pay a ransom to get that information back. All right, so in conclusion, like I said, it is possible for you to implement some protection for your nonprofit. So I hope that you guys have seen a little bit of that today. And you can, like I said, the best thing is for you to have a cybersecurity awareness and set up a culture in your agency. And if you do that, that's half the problem, because most of the problems come from your staff. If and I would say, I don't know what happened with TMH and some of those agencies in Tallahassee, and but a lot of it, I bet you, was because someone wasn't aware, they clicked on something they weren't supposed to, or gained access to something they weren't supposed to. So if you do that, you're halfway there. You want to identify your assets. You want to implement protocols to protect your data and your systems. And I'm going to send a checklist, so you can use our assessment tool to kind of see where you are. With that, I'll open it up for any questions. All right, no questions. I'll leave my information here up for a minute. Again, Fredrick Smith, my wife is Tamika Smith. Like she said, we kind of tag team. She knows a little bit more about your programs and nonprofit areas, and I'm more of the IT guy. I kind of help build automations and IT products to help nonprofits and organizations be more efficient. So definitely, that's my information. Our information there. If you need us, just reach out to us, and we're here to help. All right, Justin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out this afternoon. We hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and based on the chat, it seems like that this presentation was very informative and entertaining for everyone that was involved here. Again, this presentation will be available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and we'll have it posted on our Facebook feed sometime later tomorrow, as well as Fredrick has shared earlier in the presentation that the presentation will be available to us to share with you all later on. So other than that, the last few announcements that I have is that on next week, Tuesday, we'll be having an ARPA workshop that is for current ARPA grantees only, as they will be the only ones getting the info needed to ensure that they are doing everything that they need to do in compliance, as the ARPA cycle is about to end September 30th of this year. So we'll have an ARPA workshop with the city and county staff in regards to that, on reporting and everything that needs to get done, as that window is closing very soon. Other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Tamika. Thank you, Fredrick, for your time this afternoon. We are greatly appreciative of everything that you have shared this afternoon. And we hope everyone here today has a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.
All right, thank you so much. And Jacqueline, the information is on the screen. I don't know if you're still, you see the screen, but it's our contact information is there if you need it.
Have a great day.
Only you, so I have to find it. Thank you.
We'll make sure to get it to you. We'll make sure to get it to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.